Hey, welcome back to the channel. And if you're new here, thank you so much for checking us out. Today, I have 5 great tips for you today, and please stick around to the end of this video. I have a little personal story that concerns this guitar right here, but let's get into the licks and tricks. Okay, so for today's example, I'm going to be playing a 1-4-5 blues out of C major. If you're unfamiliar, it's going to be a C major 7 chord. Looks like that. F7 chord, and you could either slide it up to get to your 5 chord, a G7, or like this, kind of a C chord with the pinky on the G string for your G7, which will be our 5 chord. So the first thing I wanted to show you, that's a signature B.B. King trick, if you want to even call it that, is the use of one note. This guy was so good, he would hit one note, and you would know it was him. Too good. So we're up here at the 20th fret on the high E string for our C note, which, like I said, is the root of our examples today. And he would just slide it down like that sometimes, or just let it ring out with a little bit of vibrato. So I'm going to kick on the loop now, 1-4-5 out of C, and let's see how this thing operates. Okay, so I was just playing, we're up here at the 8th fret, high E string, and I'm using my index finger, just like BB would, to give it a little whole hand vibrato. Very much trying to emulate a singer, their natural vibrato. Kind of a fast vibrato from BB. But he would also do it up in the high E string. I don't have a lot of room here with the cutaway, similar to BB, but he would use his pinky to get those notes. And then signature, a lot of times he would do the slide, which is a very BB King punctuation kind of move. So you could take any root note, really any note, put a little vibrato on it, place it in the right place, play with the syncopation, put it before the beat, after the beat, and make it your own. So let's move on to the next lick and or trick. Certainly we can't talk about the blues without talking about bends. And definitely we can't talk about BB King without mentioning those bends. And BB had a very cool type of bend that I almost attribute to sounding like a slide player in the way he would bend the note, but not quite reach the normal destination like you would if you were kind of doing like that kind of thing. So BB would flirt with a third and kind of nudge it up into the major third, which, if you're unfamiliar with the blues, or maybe you've heard this before, a lot of the blues sound is mixing of major and minor sounds. So if you don't understand this theory mumbo jumbo, don't really worry about it. I'm just going to break it down for you. We're at the 16th fret B string, and we're bending the note up a half step, which just means 1 fret. But what makes it very signature to BB is he would almost not get all the way there and make it kind of sour, which is a very blues thing to do, a very vocal thing to do. And like I was saying, sort of a slide thing to do too. You're kind of Dwayne Allmans and whatnot, which came after BB. Or another place you can implement this is at the 11th fret, high E string, same thing. Our minor third, half step bend into our major third, giving that kind of sour, kind of crying sound, you know, very signature of the blues. And or also 13th fret, when we get to our 4 chord, bending up into that blues note. And another sweet kind of extra trick of phrasing here with bends is you can cut the bend off to silence. Sorry there. So lots of cool bending tricks there. And another bend trick that BB would get into more when like the solos would come up and the dynamics would be rising, you know, the band gets louder, is he would hit these bends and then hit a double string. So he's up at the high E string, for my example here, and when you're bending, you're bumping into the other strings above it anyway. So he hits the B string while bending the high E string and bends it with it, which kind of gives it this like extra snarl and attitude, which I think is really cool. So lots of bending tricks out of BB. That's why he's the king, and that's why we love him. The next thing, which a lot of great players use, and I've mentioned in other of these licks and tricks videos, which I'll link somewhere over here, but moving along, is the use of volume and dynamics. See, BB was not just a great guitarist, but he was also a very well-known great band leader. He would, constantly be putting his hand up, telling the band to bring down the volume, kind of slow the tempo, whatever it may be. But even with his own playing, with his own discretion, which I feel like takes a lot of discipline, he would play a lot quieter. Let's roll our volume back. Guitarist, this thing is called a volume knob. Feel free to use it at times. Doesn't always have to be at 10 or 11. But yeah, he would play kind of quiet sometimes. It almost gives the impression of like a whimper or like a quiet whisper, before, the blues really come out and you're just wailing. So let's hear it in context with our loop here. So yeah, playing kind of soft, playing kind of loud. You can mix that around. It kind of tells a story. And BB was a great storyteller on and off the guitar. So definitely something to use, add into your technique when you're making solos and leads. It gives the listener something to want, something to look forward to, not just beating him over the head the whole time with just loud, full attack volume. Okay? So that brings us to our next lick and trick from BB King, which is just slides. He would go from one position, so we'll take it up here once again, 17th fret G string, 16th fret, 18th fret on the B string. So start up here, formerly known as the BB box. And he would make that kind of ricochet sound almost, moving from position to position. So if you know your pentatonic position here at the 8th fret, but you're coming from the BB box, you could just hit that down to your next position. So using that as a very musical device and also a way to get around into positions. So BB was great at that. Takes a little accuracy, a little bit to work on, but once you get it, it's very satisfying, kind of like hitting a bullseye on a dartboard or hitting a horseshoe or something. Okay, so that brings us to our last lick and trick here, which is a little bit of jazz sophistication. So BB notoriously, infamously, said he didn't know any theory, and wasn't a very sophisticated player, but I beg to differ, and I'm going to show you a little lick here that he would play over a 5-chord that I think is a little jazzy, a little sophisticated. So let's get our loop going. So we're at the 1 chord. To the 4 chord. 5 chord. We'll do it again here. Hit our 1-note BB signature. Bend up to the blues note. Okay, so did you catch that? He kind of went outside the pentatonic, which the rest of these licks have all been pentatonic. But when he goes to this 5 chord, this G7 here, he kind of hits this almost augmented. And then a little chromatic, which just means hitting like neighboring notes kind of thing. You can play different variations of this, but the main gist is it gets to this G7 shape here, this G7 chord. He feeds you this really sweet ear candy. And that's definitely right out of a jazz player's book, right out of their toolbox. And he's just outlining the chord, which is a very jazz thing to do, or even a very horn player thing to do. That's the 5 licks and tricks of BB King that I wanted to share with you today on his 100th birthday. But something else I wanted to share with you, and it pertains to this guitar, as I stated in the intro, is this is my first guitar ever. First real electric guitar. My mom was very nice enough to buy this for me when I was 15 or 16. I was a bass player in a jazz band prior to that, but wanted to get into electric guitar like a lot of my cool friends. But my mom had one stipulation about it, and it was, if I'm going to buy you the electric guitar, you're going to play the blues. And BB King was the man, still is the man. So we got a Lucille-esque type guitar. This is a Oscar Schmidt Washburn guitar. You can see it says Delta King there. I think the King is maybe a nod to BB even, or at least that's what I like to tell myself. But yeah, this was a $150 guitar off Musician's Friend at the time. And this thing started my whole life right here. This guitar lessons page, this YouTube, my guitar lessons, playing in bands, learning songs, everything was on this guitar. And a funny little story about it is, for the longest time, I just played chords on this thing and just learned all my basic songs and didn't even bend a note until I was like an adult, or maybe even into my 20s even. So this guitar has stayed in pretty darn good condition because, I wasn't gigging when I started off, and, I used to have a pick guard on it that I just took off a few years ago. So for a 20-plus year guitar, 20-year-old plus guitar, very reflective, it's in great shape. So don't let anybody tell you that cheap guitars can't be great, because this thing, like I said, was $150. I've played shows with it. I've even recorded in the studio with this thing. I've done a lot with this, and it's a great guitar. So whatever you got out there to learn on, it's great. Especially nowadays, cheap guitars are better than ever. So don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And that's it for me today. So thank you so much for checking this video out about the great, late BB King on his 100th birthday. And if you found this video informative, educational, or entertaining at any point, I highly encourage you to hit like, subscribe, share, leave a comment down below what your first guitar was, if you gave your guitar a name, any of that kind of stuff, and we'll see you next time. Thank you again.